Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we look at a safer way to deal with credit. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another Advanced Studio Classroom. I'm your host for today. My name is Simon, and you are joining me for the second day of our June Finance article. The article is called Financial Focus, Online Resources Help when Tackling Complex Financial Issues. And we certainly had a complex financial issue to discuss in the first day of this article. We talked about futures and derivatives, which are basically an agreement to buy or sell something at a set price in the future. Specifically, we talked about resources to help you learn about those things. Today, we're going to talk about another resource, but this is a very different type of resource. This is the sort of resource you might use every day. Joining me in the studio to discuss this e-wallet app that protects families and their debit card numbers, I have two panelists. The first is Rebecca Kay. Welcome back, Rebecca.
It's good to be back.
It's nice to have you back today. Thank you so much for helping out with derivatives and futures and options and all of those complex things yesterday. Our second panelist today is Josh. Josh, Hello. It's good to have you.
Hello, everyone. It's very good to be back.
Josh, do you have a credit card?
I actually have a number of credit cards.
Do you worry about them?
No.
Never?
No.
Rebecca, how about you?
Yes, I have a credit card, and I don't really worry about them. But I think it's because the way I use it is quite different from the way this article talks about the usage of credit cards.
I feel old now because I worry about my credit cards at least a couple of times a year. One of the problems I've often had with credit cards is when I travel, they get locked. Because, of course, I use credit cards from Canada, but I live here in Taipei. And if I don't use my card for a while and then I use it too frequently in a different place, they will put a security lock on it. You have to call from some far-off destination and have your card unlocked. So for me, credit card security is always a big concern.
Interesting.
Yeah, you've not had this experience?
I have had that in the past, but that's why I have a certain type of credit card.
Oh,
you guys can talk about that after the program.
It's so good to
detail.
be American. You have so many choices available to you. That's wonderful. Okay, well, today our lesson is called E-Wallet App Protects Family Debit Card Number. And there are a couple of interesting terms right here in the title. The first one that I would point out is debit card. Now, this is sort of a term that we don't necessarily use every day if we aren't from the right country. Josh, tell us, what is a debit card?
Well, a debit card, it looks like a credit card, but it is connected to a bank account. And every time you use that card, it debits or withdraws that amount of money from your bank account.
So would you say a debit card is the same thing as an ATM card?
Yes.
It is the same thing. Now, it gets a little complicated, though, because these days, often your bank card, that's another term for the debit card, right, or your ATM card, will also be linked to your credit card, right? You can get a debit card that has a Visa logo on it and can be used like a Visa, for example, when you're purchasing things online.
Oh, that's okay. So that's actually a very good distinction. So in my experience, most bank cards that are issued by banks also have some sort of debit backing, meaning that they also have a Visa here. So it's only been when I've gone to other countries where I first experienced that not all bank cards are also what we would call debit cards.
Okay, so we are stumbling into a bit of a problem with the English language here. And the problem specifically is that when ATMs, automated teller machines, bank machines, were introduced, people had a bank card. But over time, we found there were limitations with this sort of system. For example, you can't use your bank card to buy things online. You might need a credit card instead. And so very, very gradually, financial institutions have pushed all of these things together so that you can have fewer cards that have more services available on them. And the result is some confusion over these terms. So as we go through this article, we will probably be using these something card terms interchangeably. So I say this to you listeners just so you won't be confused and think, oh, I thought you were talking about your bank card, or oh, I thought you were talking about your credit card. There is some confusion about this in English, and for the most part, I think native English speakers use the context of what is being said to make a guess about the specifics of the card, or they might get into more specific discussion. Let's begin with our first reading today. Listeners, you will find the reading on page 17. We're going to look at the left-hand column, and we're going to read all of the first section there. Let's do that reading now.
E-Wallet app protects family debit card number. Many families have a single debit or credit card shared among several individuals, including teens and college students who may lose track of purchases, buy from unsecured websites, or access money without clearing the amount with parents. These problems may do more than cause friction in the family. They can put the family credit at risk if a card number is stolen or a card is misplaced. A simple solution: prepaid credit cards with unique one-time use numbers distinct from a family's debit card number and bank account. One example of the latest in prepaid card technology is Movo Coin. Users of the Movo e-wallet app can create digital prepaid cards on the spot in exact denominations for specific purchases. Movo Coin was developed by Movo Cash, a financial technology company that offers an all-in-one app and platform for safely sending and spending money.
Okay, welcome back, listeners. Now, our first reading here, it begins with a very interesting statement, and it might seem strange to many of you. It says, many families have a single debit or credit card shared among several individuals. Now, if you pause and think about that for a second, the strange thing isn't that it's a debit or credit card. So we were talking about card confusion before. The strange thing is that the different families are all sharing one account. And that's the sort of thing that probably has not been part of your financial experience if you're listening to that program. Josh, do you have shared bank accounts with a family member?
I used to until I came to Taipei, and now I don't. But what I do, though, is I have a shared credit card account with my wife.
Okay. How about you, Rebecca?
No, I don't have any accounts that I share with other people.
But you're primarily based in Taipei, right?
Yeah,
Your financial stuff.
My financial stuff is based here.
Okay, I'll be honest. I do not have a single one of my own accounts in my home country of Canada. They're all shared with someone else.
And some of these are not just with your wife, right? Because out in Asia, people do share accounts, but it's usually with their spouse.
Well, that is interesting because actually we ran into trouble when my wife and I tried to open a shared account here in Asia. And the trouble was that basically it can't be equally shared. Like you're only able to get one card for the account. So you can't each have a card. And so you can both sort of have signing power if you go into the bank, but you can't both be using all of the services from the account at the same time. Now, that's totally different than the situation you would find in Canada or the U.S. Now, to be honest, the reason I share most of my accounts is because I'm not in Canada most of the time. So if something happens, I can't just go into the bank. So I have another family member on different accounts. But it is fairly common for especially husbands and wives and families to have shared bank accounts, a shared credit card, and each person will just have one card that accesses that financial service. So it's a very different way of sort of thinking, but it creates a real risk here, you can see, right? If you give your teenager their own copy of the credit card, and then they go away for the weekend and have a great time, you might find yourself with a huge surprise bill. And that creates this kind of difficult situation. And that's what they go on to say here, including teens and college students who may lose track of purchases. What a kind way of saying it, right? buy from unsecured websites or access money without clearing the amount with your parents. Now, the risk here is obvious. It's not just that you might be stuck with a big bill. The other big problem, of course, is that it might ruin your credit if you don't pay things, or there's risk that the whole family's credit card number will be stolen, things like that, right? This is a problem. So in the second paragraph, they tell us a little more about these problems. What do they say, Josh?
Well, they say that these problems could be more serious than just causing friction or causing tension or fighting in the family, that they also could put the entire credit rating at risk.
Okay, and they offer a simple solution for this. They say prepaid credit cards. Now, prepaid credit cards, these are a thing I started to see a few years ago when I went, on annual trips back to Canada, basically at the bank. Or in a store, you see a stack of credit cards that say prepaid on them, and you can pick them up, and then you put however much money you want to be on the credit card on the card. It's actually a lot like an Easy card or a Yo-Yo card or a card you might use for public transit in places in Asia, where you just put the amount of money you want to use and store on the card, and then you can go and use it. But here, we're talking about something a little different, right, Rebecca? How is this prepaid credit card different from those ones I was seeing?
Well, there's two differences. First of all, this one works as an app. And second of all, you can create unique one-time use numbers.
Okay, and so when we say a one-time use number, we're not talking about the money here. What number are we talking about, Josh?
Well, we're talking about the number that would be associated with the card, or like the number you would find on the credit card if the credit card was a square piece of plastic that you handed to someone, although, of course, this is a little bit different. Okay,
so the risk we're talking about controlling here isn't actually so much controlling your teenagers' spending. What we're talking about here is more a worry of things like credit card numbers being stolen because of the way someone in the family is using the credit card, maybe being careless with the credit card number. So we're talking more about protecting from data theft here, right? Like if you go on a website and you lose the number to terrible people who misuse that credit card number. Is that right, Rebecca?
Yes, that's true. And also, but on the other hand, it also controls how much the other family member can spend. For example, let's go back to teenagers. Perhaps a teenager is going off for a trip on the weekend. If I give him just a one-time use number, that's the only amount he can use from this card.
But of course, your teenager then, they can only use this one-time card once. So you would use this sort of system if you wanted to give your child money for one specific purchase.
For example, your teenager says, I would like to buy a bike because my university campus is too big and I can't walk to all the buildings fast enough. So maybe your son or daughter will say, well, I need $500 for the bike.
That's an expensive bike, Rebecca.
Okay,
students don't
bike.
need $500 US bikes.
Only the best for your students, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, only the best for my teenager.
Fair enough. Okay, so and they basically go into that in the last paragraph here. They say users of the Movo e-wallet app can create digital prepaid cards on the spot. Now, when we say on the spot, it means you just, right wherever you are, you just open your phone app and you create it in exact denominations. And that's what you were talking about, Rebecca. So you give a very specific amount of money for this purchase. And this app, this platform, MovoCoin, was developed by MovoCash, a financial technology company that offers an all-in-one app and platform for safely sending and spending money. Now, when we say all-in-one, what are we talking about, Josh?
Well, it's all combined into one service.
Okay, fair enough. That brings us to our second reading for today. It's under the section, How Can You Use It? And listeners, you will find this reading on the left-hand column at the very bottom on page 17 of your Advanced magazine. Let's do that reading now.
How can you use it? Individuals with a Movo account can create a Movo coin that functions as a single-use Visa card for a specific amount for a fee of 50 cents per Movo coin. Users can create Movo coins for a variety of uses. including managing bills, shopping online, placing food orders, and paying ride-sharing services. Movo Coin can also be used for everyday transactions, such as buying gas or groceries, to protect access to a permanent debit card. Each Movo Coin has its own identification number and provides not only instant value, but also an extra layer of security because the permanent card number is never shared in a transaction. If a Movo Coin number is stolen, it is worthless and has no impact on a permanent Movo Cash account balance or permanent card number. To generate a Movo Coin, users of the app select the Movo account, then choose the Movo Coin option, entering the desired dollar amount for a purchase, bill payment, or other transaction. The unique Movo Coin number is generated, and the transaction occurs with no link to the user's primary account information.
Okay, now we're using a lot of different terms here. We're beginning this reading with individuals with a Movo account, and we've already used the word Movo Cash and Movo Coin. So let's just clarify what these different terms mean before we move on. So we have the term Movo Cash, and that was sort of the name of the platform that is doing all of this, right? But we also have this term Movo Coin. So we're going to be using this term Movo Coin, but this has nothing to do with coins, right, Josh?
Right. So this is a little bit confusing, but it's also what's unique about this service is that every time you want to use it, you generate a one-time use credit card number, or it looks like a credit card number, and that is what they're referring to here as a Movo Coin.
Okay, so the Movo Coin, it is a one-time use credit card, but you were right when you said it looks like a credit card because it has a number. So the idea is you're not actually going to get a plastic card here. It's a thing on your phone, kind of like Apple Pay or something, where you're going to see a separate number on the bill, but you're not actually going to have a different credit card every time you want to buy something, right? So basically, they start this second reading by saying individuals with a Movo account can create a Movo Coin, so a one-time use card that functions as a single-use Visa card for a specific amount. Now, there is a fee for this. It's not free, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, it's 50 cents per Movo Coin.
What do you think? Is that expensive or not too expensive?
Well, I think it really depends. Like, if you're going to use different Movo Coins every single day, that could really come up to a lot of fees. But if you're only giving your teenager specific Movo Coins, like maybe 5 Movo Coins a month, then I think that's okay.
Okay, so, when I go into a convenience store, I often see people just pay with their phone, right? They buy a sandwich or something. You're not going to use Movo Coins for this sort of thing because of the fee.
Yeah, definitely not, because that would really add up very quickly.
You're going to use it more for things where maybe you're worried about security, like you're making an online purchase, for example, would be a good example. So you might use it more like you would use a traditional credit card for bigger purchases or things like that, as opposed to day-to-day. I'm hesitating to use the term Apple Pay because I don't want to promote them too much, but there you go, like an Apple Pay device.
Sure. I would say that especially in the United States, where it's more and more common to do purchases online, for not just for big purchases, for small purchases, if you wanted to, and of course you have to use some sort of card number in order to pay for them, if you wanted to let your family members, your teenagers, your children buy stuff online, of course you wouldn't want to give them the credit card that could also buy maybe a large car as well as a video game. And so for this, just limiting it to individual transactions does actually give you a lot of peace of mind. So if 50 cents is worth peace of mind, then it's probably worth it.
Now, to be clear here, listeners, we're giving personal opinion about how we would use this now, because in the next part of our reading, we actually go on to hear a huge list of different things that you could use this for if you were willing to pay the 50-cent fee, right? So give us a small list, Josh.
Well, so the small list here is actually it lists all sorts of different things, right?
Not a small list. Yeah.
But let me just talk about things that people would use it for. That would be for maybe paying bills.
Okay, paying bills. They also say shopping online, placing food orders, and paying for ride-sharing services. So I guess the thing in my mind that all of those things have in common is maybe you don't want to put your credit card at risk for those individual transactions. Like if you're doing ride-sharing, that's something like Uber, right? And for the most part, you're going to trust Uber with your credit card number, right? Because it's a big company or whatever. But if you're in a situation where you're not sure, maybe you could use this Movo coin. But they also go on to say you actually can use this for everyday purchases, right? So they say Movo coin can be used for everyday transactions such as buying gas or groceries to protect access to a permanent credit card. And the key there again is to protect access to the permanent card. So I guess you can use it for anything you would use your other financial tools for, but you would do it maybe when you feel sensitive about the security, right?
Exactly.
Okay. That brings us to the top of the right-hand column where they said each Movo coin has its own identification number. We've mentioned that provides not only instant value but also an extra layer of security because the permanent card number is never shared in a transaction. So that's key. How does this work? It's like they make a fake Visa number or a fake MasterCard number for this one transaction. So you'll see a number that isn't actually your credit card number on the bill, but it's linked to your account. And we continue on by explaining what happens if the card number is stolen. Rebecca, tell us what happens then.
Well, if the Movo coin number is stolen, it doesn't impact your permanent account because the Movo coin number does not show the real account number. It's a unique number just for this Movo coin transaction.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of useless, the number. Like when you create the coin, you then use it to pay for something, and the coin has been used. The Movo coin's been used. So if somebody gets that number, it's not like they can use it again, right?
Right, because it can't be used again.
Well, and that's very different from what happens with traditional credit card fraud, where if someone gets a hold of your number, what do?
Well, the first thing they do probably is run a small little transaction through to make sure that it goes ahead and then wait for a little bit to make sure that nothing bad happens, and then they run the big transaction through.
And they do it very quickly. They buy everything on Amazon all at one point or something like that. Okay, so the idea is you are protected against this theft. So how do you create one of these coins if you want to use this service, Josh?
Well, to generate or to create a Movo coin, you just use the app by selecting your account that has the money in it, and then you choose the Movo coin option, and you give them a desired dollar amount in order to create an individual Movo coin for an individual transaction.
Do you see any limitations to this sort of process?
Well, besides how much money you have in your Movo coin account?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's an obvious limitation, right? If you don't have enough money to pay, you don't have enough money to pay. The main thing I wonder about is time. And the reason I wondered about that is until very recently in Canada, they didn't actually use IC chips. That's the little golden chip on your card. And the reason they didn't use them, they used a much less secure way of doing credit cards, the magnetic strip on the back. The reason was it takes an extra second or so at the cash register to process. And they found that when they were using credit cards that way, it was like the lines in stores got longer, and they were concerned about that. And so, at least that's what I've heard. And so my question here is, like, how quickly can you generate a Movo coin and pay? Like, is there going to be a long, angry line behind you when you do this?
I would imagine that probably for the most part, I know it does talk about paying for your groceries, but I would imagine most of these transactions happen in front of a computer where there is no line, or with a dollar amount that you know ahead of time, for example, your electric bill, right? So you could generate it ahead of time before you actually need to give it to someone. It's a little bit different, like you said, in the grocery store line because you have to wait till you get the total before you generate it. So in that case, it would probably take a little extra time. So
again, we're kind of talking about a unique tool here to use in very specific situations and maybe an ideal tool for that. Our reading concludes with the unique Movo coin number is generated and the transaction occurs with no link to the user's primary account information. So again, Basically, what we're talking about is a thing that is super secure. That's the idea, a super secure way to do transactions, and maybe a thing that is particularly appealing if you are sharing your financial accounts with other people and you don't necessarily know how much control you have over what they are going to be doing. So you can see how this is an innovation that sort of fits very well with the cultural context and a problem that has grown up there.
It also fits to address one other problem that might be a little bit more specific to the United States, and that is, at the beginning of the show, Simon had mentioned how easy it is to get different credit card products in the United States, and it's true. It is very easy, and a lot of people get credit cards that probably shouldn't have credit cards, and then they ruin their credit rating, and then after that, they find it very, very difficult to get any kind of credit card. And at that point, it really becomes a problem, especially in a modern society where you need to use credit card numbers to make a lot of payments, like buying airplane tickets, for example. So for those people, this would be a really good option for those people who have burned through kind of their credit rating in order to be able to generate safe one-time numbers that they could use as a card.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of our June Finance article. We've had some interesting ideas and some interesting resources, things that you might find worth checking out, even if just to practice your English, and particularly your financial English, your specialized business English. These are resources that might be a good chance to practice that. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you join us on another Advanced Studio Classroom program. Until then, my name is Simon.
This is Josh.
This is Rebecca.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.